Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of First Canada Live. This is going to be a great show. I'm your host, First Canada MC Karthik Kanagasabapathy, and joining me today we have a special guest host from the First Canada Youth Council, Namirah from Team 7480. Hey Namirah.
Hi, Karthik. Thank you so much for having me and everyone else here today.
Well, thanks for being on the show. Namirah, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Namirah Kadir, and I'm from Team 7480, the Machine Mavericks from Kingston, Ontario. I joined the whole FIRST community about a year and a half ago, and I'm also on the First Canada Youth Council, which has been super exciting for me.
That's great. And you've been involved with a lot of cool initiatives, some of which we're going to be talking about today. If you're wondering, First Canada Live is a show that brings together the FIRST community in Canada and beyond. We're going to bring on a lot of teams, personalities, volunteers, alums, members of our youth council, FIRST staff members to discuss what's going on with FIRST, what's happened this season, and talk about their robots and talk about their stories, their first journeys. Yesterday we had Rishi from 1310 on, who gave us a really cool story about their Einstein run. And today's show, we've got a lot of cool stuff happening. We have Team 771 Ontario Provincial Champions with a team showcase talking about their robot and their team structure. We have story time with first serial volunteer, April Riddett from National Instruments, who's from Texas, who's an FTA and CSA, and she's going to be telling us a little bit about her first journey. Our First Canada Youth Council is back today talking about their Project Green initiative. And our first guest is going to be Team 1305, Ice Cube from North Bay, one of the most successful teams in Ontario. So throughout the show, if you have any questions, pop into the Twitch chat, drop your questions there. We'll be trying to get to as many of your questions as possible as we can on the show. And remember, we're here to have some fun on the show, celebrate excellence, and kind of bring our community together. So let's just keep that positive energy and those positive vibes, and let's go. But hey, don't want to waste any time here. So I'd like to introduce Team 1305, Ice Cube from North Bay, Ontario. They've been involved in FIRST going all the way back to 2004. They've won 17 blue banners. I think that's tied for third most in the province, including 7 regionals and districts, most recently winning the 2019 Georgian College and North Bay District events, along with the 2019 North Bay District Chairman's Award. And also, they're one of 2 Canadian teams who has qualified for the championship every single year going back to 2004. So we're talking about a long run of success, great people, great robots. So I'd like to welcome their 2 student representatives who are on the show today. We've got Rithika S. and Jared K. Say hello, folks.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
Hey, Jared and Rithika, Rithika, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure, I'll start off. So I joined 1305 5 years ago. I'm currently in grade 12, so this is sadly my final year on the team. But so I was an FLL student back a while, like 8 years ago, had fun in FLL, decided to join FRC and loved it ever since.
Awesome. I love the background there. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so this is my shirt wall back here. So I've collected so many shirts over the past 5 years on FRC teams. I got some FLL shirts, some FRC shirts, and it's just cool to see all the progression of shirts from 2016 all the way up to 2020 this year.
Yeah, it's like you're working at the shore store on the Jersey Shore, except it's for FIRST, which makes it like infinitely cooler. Rithika, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so this is my 4th season on the team. I'm in grade 11, and likewise with Jared, I started out in FLL, loved it there, found out there's an FRC team in North Bay, and joined.
All right, well, let's dive right into the team showcase. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your robot? Everything else, anything you want to tell us today, it's all game. That's what we do here on First Canada Live.
Perfect. So this is just a funny picture we threw in the presentation. So we were actually traveling with the robot, and we actually broke the window of one of our cars. And so a bunch of glass went into the robot, and it was fun to get glass out of the robot, because who doesn't love glass in the robot? So we said this year has been full of many impacts, as a little pun there. So that was very fun. So this is our 20th year. We've been 17 years with FIRST. And so like Karthik said, each year we've actually had the chance to travel to World Championships. So our team actually has 3 names: First Team 1305, Near North Student Robotics Initiative, and most of you guys know us as Ice Cubed. So what most of you guys want to see is our robot. So let's just talk a little bit about some of our prototypes first. So on the left, you can see we have some ball shooter prototypes. We tested some different wheel sizes, some different compressions, whether we want to have a flat back for the ball. So this is all stuff we need to test in order to get a successful shooter for this year. So it's kind of cool to see what balls would do when they're a little ripped, when they're a little worn, with more compression, just to see the difference in ball travel. And then in the middle, we just have a little test climber. So this was our method to try to figure out how to grab the bar with just pulling down on it. So it's kind of hard to explain from just a picture, but if you guys can figure it out, that's awesome. And then on the right, this is a really cool system that we came up with. We call it the beer rollers. Our team does lots of ball drives. So it's kind of cool because we actually got the idea from there. And so our balls funnel through, it's zero resistance, and none of the balls can actually grip onto each other.
Hey, Jared, you talked about, the differences with compression and with nicks in the balls. Did you find any consistency in terms of, or like kind of like a rule of thumb of how balls travel when they start to get nicked?
So one thing that we noticed is with the more compression, the less affected the rip balls are. So we actually ended up using about 2 inches of compression, which seems like a lot, but so it actually helped us because when we had, let's say, 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch of compression, then a ripped or messed up ball would actually wobble a lot more throughout the air. So we ended up using 2 inches of compression on our actual robot in order to make it the most consistent.
Nice.
So it's always cool. I like seeing the progression of the robot. So this is what our robot looked like about week 3. So this is when our base is completed and we actually have the side panels made out of this wood material. And so we actually let some kids draw on it, so it looked kind of cool. And so you guys can see how we jankily wire all our robot and how everything looks messy as is. But throughout the competition season, you actually get your robot to look cleaner and make it look more competitive.
Looks sick.
I actually kind of like the wood version with the graffiti tags on that.
Me too. That should be a
now I kind of
competition
want to see a team do that at some point. That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, it was actually a big discussion on our team whether we keep the little graffiti walls and make some actually good high quality ones of them, and because it actually does look really cool, and it was kind of actually really neat.
Yeah, and it's unique. I've never seen a team do something like that. So I'm kind of hoping that we see that late, maybe this season, maybe next season.
Yeah. So then this is what our final build looked like. So we actually cut out those side panels out of Lexan. And so it's actually really cool to see all the Lexan in our robot. The robot actually looks really clear and it's hard to see what's actually holding it all together. So it's actually really cool to see, in my opinion.
What thickness is the Lexan on those side plates?
1/4 inch, yeah. So it's actually really cool. We have a CNC router in our room, and it's just so awesome because this is all those side panels, that's 2 sheets of Lexan, and everything has been catted together. So every motor hole, every bearing hole, all the little grooves and holes for all our rollers, they all need to be exact. Otherwise, it messes everything up. So everything had to be super precise and catted in order to make the robot successful.
This robot looks so sweet.
Mm-hmm. So then I just want to talk about a few of our build challenges. So as most teams know, balls jamming was a huge problem. So we actually didn't see it right away. It took us about 4 days until we got more balls, because when we first had our single ball, we couldn't tell. But then as soon as we realized that, we knew we had to carry the balls in a way that the balls wouldn't spin on each other and anything. And we actually figured out it would actually tear apart robots with some of our prototypes. So we actually came up with our beer roller system, like we said. And BEER is actually an acronym, Ball Enhanced Evacuation Rollers. We made a little acronym for it. And then some more challenges we had were our climb fails. So this is one thing we didn't prototype, where it's like, oh, it's easy to make a climb. We've done it before. And we actually never prototyped it. And actually, we messed up many times because of it. We actually ended up building 3 different climbs. And then another problem we had was running up on balls. So just driving around and balls would get caught under your bumpers. And we actually kind of came up with a unique solution to that.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then our Falcon shafts and our cooling port screws. So we actually used all Falcons on our robot. And for some, it happened to a lot of teams, thankfully not us, the Falcon shafts would actually come out. So that was actually, we really got nervous, and we actually spent a full day taking off all our Falcons, taking them apart, Loctiting them, just for the precaution. And
how many Falcons did you end up with on the robot total?
We ended up having 10 Falcons. Yeah. So, and one thing that we had a problem with the Falcons is the cooling port screw. So for those of the teams that don't know, the Falcons had a little set screw that you can throw into the side where you can cool the Falcons actually. And so for us, that actually vibrated in and actually started rubbing against the casing. And so it was actually on our intake, and we were so confused why the motor wouldn't spin fast enough or have enough torque or anything. And we actually discovered that. And then, so we went through and Loctited all those as well.
Yeah, all the cooling port screws and the set screws on the face of the Falcon, they tend to walk themselves a little bit deeper with vibration, and they can actually seize the rotor if you're not careful. The recommendation, we were going around the Humber event just telling every team, get all those screws out, just tape them over.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so I'll talk about it a little bit later, but we did make some drive-based mistakes where that actually caused us to have some failures. So for example, we actually didn't plan for things to fall into our robot. So when you're working on your robot, screws and stuff fall into your robot. So we actually had no real good places for those to fall out. So stuff would get stuck in it. And it was lots of fun to get all that out. So we'll go into some robot specs. So you can see this is what our 2020 robot looks like. His name's Canuck. So it's our 20th year as a team. So we went with the 20th periodic element, which is calcium. So that's how we name our robots. So CA for Canuck. So some cool things, our drivetrain, it's 8-wheel West Coast drive. So this was actually our first year going West Coast drive. I recommend it to every team. It's so good. It makes changing wheels and everything so much better. We went 6-inch pneumatic tires, 2-speed gearbox, and we had a 4 Falcon 500 drivetrain. And then our intake, it was belt driven by Falcons, like I said, 3D printed mechanism wheels. So we actually made the mistake of ordering left side mechanism wheels, but not right side mechanism wheels. So it was actually kind of funny. And then they got sold out right away. So we ended up just 3D printing some, and it worked out really well, actually. Our hopper, it has a 5-ball capacity, 0 friction rollers, and it's gravity fed. And then
what do you mean by 0 friction rollers?
So that's our beer roller system. So there's no friction on the balls, so they can just fall straight through without getting caught on anything, and it actually works very well.
Could you elaborate on the gravity fed aspect of it?
So just the weight of the ball, just gravity pushing itself, feeds it right into our system that feeds into our shooter. So whether it's 1 ball or 5 balls, they all can just roll directly into the wheels that feed into the shooter. Speaking of shooter, it's driven by 3 Falcon 500s on PID control, and we actually use 6-inch high grip wheels. That's everything.
What was the gearing off the Falcons to the 6-inch wheels? 1-to-1?
Yes, we went 1-to-1 for the Falcons. So I'm sure what most of you guys came to see is our robot reveal. So if we could play the robot reveal.
All right, that video is just getting queued up. It's going to be there in a second. Here we go. Well, that was impressive. I'm pumped to learn even more about this robot now.
Awesome. So here's just a little video of our shooter in action. I don't know if it'll play, but so we had spent a lot of time tuning our shooter for the auto line. So we knew we wanted to have a high quality shooter for auto. So getting those 3-pointers in auto was a priority for us. So in this video, we actually get 5 out of 5 in 3-pointer. So it's actually really cool to see. It might not work, but that's all right. So we can go next slide then. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about our climbs. So it was actually really cool to see the variations of climbs. So we spent a lot of time working on our climb. We want a successful climb just to get the RP points because that's a priority. So this was our first iteration of climb. So pretty much what we did is we actually built wire chain out of Lexan. So it was cool to see and it looked really cool and it was very difficult and time consuming to build. But so we ended up scrapping the idea because it actually leaned back too much and it wasn't strong enough. And it was just going to take too much time to line up with the robot and everything. So we
What was the reason for building the custom wire chain instead of just using like plastic wire chain that you can buy?
So with our design, we were actually going to lift off the wire chain. So it was actually strong enough to pull itself off the robot off the ground. So instead of just bringing our hook up and then winching it down, we were actually using the wire chain to lift the robot up. So it actually did work. But the only problem was with wire chain, it will flop over. So we had to spring it back. But so when we sprung it back, it would actually lean way too far back and it just wasn't to the successful level that we wanted. So we only ended up getting one picture of this, but so we ended up building a completely new climb after that. We call it the Z-bar climb. So some teams had this climb where it just kind of goes back and forth and back and it can all fold down. So we liked this climb, but it still wasn't as successful as we liked it, only because it wasn't fast enough. It was really floppy on a robot and it added a lot of weight. We like using Lexan, so we actually made it 100% out of Lexan. So it was kind of cool to see, but we still didn't enjoy it as much as we liked, and it wasn't strong enough and high quality enough for our team. So as you can see by the video, we ended up going with a cylinder climb, so where we just raise some cylinders up, and then the cylinders shoot up, and then from there we can hook on and winch down from there. So this climb ended up working, and that's the climb we were actually bringing with us to Carleton. So yeah. And then here's our intake. So what happened, our original design with our intake was we could pick up from the human feeder station and from the floor. But so like from what happened was the balls ended up jamming lots. So we ended up struggling a lot with that. So we ended up determining we didn't need the human feeder station. So we just capped that part off and the balls fed in much better. So in the video, you can kind of see our unique way to stop the balls from running up. So, but the video doesn't seem to work. Sorry about that. But so what happens is we have some piece of Lexan with a little ramp above under it, and it actually rides the ball up to keep it off the ground. We figured out when you're pushing against the balls, as long as you get off the ground, then you can't jam up on it. So that was what we determined, and it actually really helped our intake a lot. And then so our shooter, so we ended up going with 6-inch wheels. So the reason we went with that was most teams went with 4-inch wheels. We went with 6-inch just because we want that higher RPM and just more contact on the ball. So we're originally trying to figure out a way to have 180 degrees of contact. But so we ended up going away from that because we went with the 6-inch wheels. And so, like I said, this is the same video that didn't work. But so we ended up really tuning it for the auto line, and it worked really well actually.
Jared, looking at those wheels in that photo, it seems like there's a significant amount of wear on them. Was that wear from the balls, or did you pre-wear the wheels in to get the friction surface you were looking for?
No, so we actually noticed that as well. So that was actually from the balls. So you can actually see which direction the wheels are spinning just from the wear. And so we were actually surprised on how much the balls wore down the wheels, seeing how they're just foam balls. So we were surprised by that. So we actually purchased new treads for those wheels, and it was just in case of that. So that's what we determined.
Did you notice differences in the shooter from when you have new treads on them compared to the worn down ones?
No, not really. Just because we had such a large compression, the grip amount was still there. And so it actually ended up not making that big of a difference. You just need some rubber to contact the ball. yeah, so that was. So we'll skip the build room tour just because we're running a little bit low on time. So Ritika, take it away.
All right, for the sake of time, I'm just going to go through real quick. Our team has a couple of practices when it comes to programming to make sure everything goes smooth and to plan. One such thing is our organization. If we had played the build room video, you would have seen that we try to keep as much as we can organized, and that's the same thing with code. We have some tasks that we do before we program, during our programming, and after our programming, such as setting up a GitHub repository before we start doing anything, just to make sure we have saved copies of our code so we can go back. This came in handy a couple of times during the season where our drivetrain just didn't seem to want to work, and we were going through our code and we couldn't find out why. We just pushed back to an older commit and then got everything working. And then looking through, we figured out that we were missing 2 lines of our code that reset the Falcons back to factory settings that was causing our drivetrain to go slower. It was just 2 lines of code, but having Git helped us solve that issue. And then next slide. A big part of what we do now is with our hardware and software unity, because robots is all about having that hardware and software. It's 2 parts that put together make your robot. And one of the biggest things we're trying to keep in mind is to design our robot around our sensors and not throw them on after the fact, because you can get away with throwing them on afterwards. It's like putting a cap on how good you can be later on in the season. And we don't want to put a cap on ourselves. We want to be the best that we can during the competition season. And one of the things that was happening during that time, the whole software unity and hardware unity, a point for that was with our Navex. Well, we put it in the center of the robot just to try to get as accurate as we can. And then Navex has a reset button. And in our robot, just above where the Navex is, there was a set of wires that were pressing the reset button. So you always got to be aware of physical factors that can change your code. And then another thing that we do is have our mini bot, which is the product of our all girls build-a-thon that we ran 3 years ago. The instructions for this is also on our website. So if any teams want to build it, they can use it. It's great for teaching new kids programming, and it's useful for testing code early on in the season when you don't have your production bot ready to go. And then next slide. Most importantly, our biggest practice is that we got to have fun. If you're not having fun in first, then there's no worth to it if you don't have fun. So if we're having a problem with our code, we just can't quite get it. If it's taking away from our fun, take a step back, wait. When you're ready to have fun, come back and that problem it'll just solve itself. When you're having fun, it just makes everything so much better.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I think we got a little bit of time here, so we're going to take some of the questions that we had from chat. The first one was from actually our next guest, April Talks Robots, and she wants to know, are there enough rollers on your robot?
So it was actually very much fun making 27 round shafts tapped on both ends. So we had so many rollers on the robot. It took lots of time to make and tap all those shafts. So it was actually really cool to make them, but it was also very time consuming.
There you go. Another question from April was, did you have a plan if you broke one of those Lexan sheets?
Well, yeah, so we actually did have a fully new, we cut out 3 of them in total, 2 for each side. And so we had 1 spare just in case. And so one thing we do, if a Lexan just corner breaks off, we just take another piece to a 1/4 inch Lexan and rip it on and drill some holes from there. And so we just make it work from whatever we got. And we also had that fully spare one in case it was catastrophic.
Very
cool.
That makes a lot of sense.
That does also make a lot of sense. We've got another question from Joe Robotics asking, over the years, what was your favorite challenge and why?
Personally, my favorite challenge, I always like the building aspect of it. So the climbs are always super fun for me. So this year, our wire chain climb was a cool challenge because we had to assemble it all. It was kind of like putting some Legos together. And I really wanted it to work, so I spent lots of time with it. Unfortunately, it didn't work. But so that was my personal favorite challenge. The climb is always super cool because you have to lift 150 pounds of robot with just some motors and some engineering.
Right.
Yeah, and then I'd have to say for this year is definitely our vision tracking, because it's the first year that we got it working up and running successfully and cleanly. It's definitely something crazy and it's super useful. And I'd say any team that has the chance should get a Limelight because it's absolutely amazing. It was really fun to learn too.
And,
That's really
we
cool.
just talked about like very specific types of challenges, but the two of you, you've been involved in FIRST a long time. You did both FLL and FRC. So in your first careers, what was your favorite game from either program?
Ooh. I'd have, oh,
You go, Ritika.
I'd have to definitely say Steamworks. It was my rookie year. It's just an entertaining game to watch too. Like there was two elements to the game. There was your fuel cells and you had your gears as well. It was just fun to watch. The climbs were really cool as well. The whole theme, everything was just great that year.
I personally say this year's my favorite year. I just liked the balls and I liked shooting. We got to throw dodgeballs around all day. And so it was really cool because I knew all about the robot, and it's cool the more you have involved, the more you get out of it. So this year I had the most involved out of any year. And so I got to see the robot out from start to finish, and it was really cool this year.
Another question we had in chat is from serial volunteer Jamie Sin. Did you hit the drone with the robot?
In the video. That was a really cool video, but I was running the same thing.
Yeah. So I was actually flying the drone and I was actually really close. We almost hit the robot with the ball. I wasn't paying attention that much and we fired the balls and it was really close and it was almost a very expensive mistake.
Well, I think really now the challenge you got to do for Ritika and the programming team is hook up, a vision target to the drone and try and track that thing down. Could be a little bit pricey, but
Fun challenge.
All fun.
So, we're kind of coming down here on time, but is there anything final things you want to say about your robot, your season, your team, anything of that line?
It's just always so much fun building the robot, and even though we didn't get to compete with the robot, it was still so much fun. I've learned so much this year, and it was so cool just to learn all the new stuff, meet new people, have new teammates, make new friends on the team, and it was just so much fun.
And Jared, you said you're a grade 12 student, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, our seniors are the ones I feel the most for with these cancellations and all of that. So how are you handling this interruption to the season?
Well, yes, it does suck. And I wish we could have been competing. But so we're definitely going to be doing some off seasons, traveling there. And so I'm definitely going to come back and mentor 1305 for sure. Hopefully be drive coach for the team. We'll see from there. But so first is a never ending journey. So I'm always going to have more first fun.
And Ritika, do you have big plans for next season?
Yeah, we got some plans in the work. Hopefully you'll see it next season. We're working on some motion profiling, but we got plans for the rookies. We got plans to teach all the new kids, and I'm excited to see what the next season's going to be.
All right. Well, I just want to say a big thank you to Jared, Ritika, and all of Team 1305, not just for being on the show and showcasing your robot, but everything you've done for the FIRST community over the years. You're at an event, you can always count on 1305 just to be helpful, energetic, great displays of great professionalism, and, for like the last 4 years, just these amazing robots. So thank you so much for being on the show, and thanks for showing us everything about your robot. So, before we get to our next segment right now, I think we have a special video from one of our sponsors. All right, thank you, Centerline, for all your support. All right, so next up, we have our next guest. It is April Riddett, Texas-based FTA and CSA, who's become very familiar to Canadian volunteers and teams up here, as she was a volunteer at the first provincial championship last season. And also, April mentors team 5052, the RoboLobos out of Cedar Park, Texas, and she works for First Crown Supplier National Instruments. Welcome, April.
Hey, thanks for having me, Karthik. I'm super excited to be here.
We're super pumped to have you on the show. April, is there anything you would like to tell us about yourself just to start things off?
Well, that's a big question. I think you covered the basics. This is my fifth season volunteering with First, fifth season doing anything with First. Not a First alumni. Uh, my fourth year with the RoboLobos. They're awesome. I love them. They're my children. And mentoring them is always a time and a half. I swear the kids teach us more than we teach them. And I've been working at NI since I graduated from university.
Sounds like a pretty good journey right there. So how did you get involved with First? I'm guessing it has to do with the NI connection, but I want to hear the story.
So my brother was on a First team. I'm not a First alumni. I did 2 years of Best Robotics as a freshman, sophomore in my first high school. My second high school wasn't affiliated with robotics at all. And I got interested in First when my brother joined a team my senior year in college, 2783 out of Louisville, Kentucky, and went to a regional, went to Worlds in St. Louis, and was hooked. I was like, this is the coolest thing, and I've got to be involved. I actually chose to work at NI partially because of their involvement with First. And I think I made it like 2 weeks of having a job before I was emailing someone being like, hey, how do I get involved with this organization? How do I get plugged into this? And so it was very much a journey of, I think this is cool and I want to do it. So definitely if you're on the fence about volunteering or don't know how to get involved, just ask someone. I was just emailing random people at NI being like, hey, I saw your name on a page with First. Are you still involved? How do I get plugged into it? Went to my first regional that year as a CSA in 2016. It was a week 2 event in the Alamo Regional in San Antonio. We had 66 teams. I was the only CSA. I had never really worked an event before. It was a wild time. Stronghold was a long game to play week 2. And we had a fire alarm go off. And so we had to
Oh
evacuate the whole
no.
facility. It was like a 4-hour delay. The best part is that when we walked back into the facility, the first thing the DJ does is gets on the booth and starts playing We Didn't Start the Fire. And it was
Been
awesome.
always burning and the world's been turned. Sorry.
Exactly. But it was wild. And after that event, I was like, this is it. This is what I love doing. And I've been, like you said, a serial volunteer ever since.
It sounds like you've had a lot of really fun and cool experiences in First, April, and it's nice to meet you. My name's Namirah, and I have a question for you, just hearing about your whole First journey. I want to ask, what's your proudest moment that you've had thus far in First? Feels like you have a lot to choose from.
Moment? For me, it's really, there's a lot. It's when I see a team that I have worked with succeed. Like when I see a team who has just like dealt with issue after issue at a competition or been up against the wall on something or can't get their robot working for this or that and the other, and they just persevere and keep going and really like dig down and get it working. And like that moment when they pull it off is like the best for me. It's seeing them succeed and knowing that like I had some small part in making that happen is like what I love most about volunteering at First.
Do you have a specific, sorry, Karthik, do you have a specific,
please keep going.
I was just wondering if you have a specific team that you'd like to showcase there.
Recently, I mean, recently I was at a Canadian Pacific Week 2 this year, and 10 More Tons was out there out of BC and showed up with a ton of problems. They're not a rookie team, but they had a whole bunch of new students. And so it was a lot of like, how do we learn to troubleshoot effectively? And they just kept tracking down like issue after issue after issue. And they ended up going on to be the 3rd pick for the First Alliance and took home a blue banner. Oh. And so that was really cool to see, just like the turnaround over the course of the weekend.
That's a cool one. 10 More Tons is actually mentored by First Ontario alum Duncan McDonald, who might be in the chat. So Dunkaroo, what's up? You know, you've been doing this for a while now, and I know you've accumulated all these amazing stories. Is there one story you'd like to tell us today?
One story that I'd like to tell you. one of the things I really love about volunteering with First is the kind of social connections you make. And so many of like my closest friends are First volunteers and First alumni and people involved in the community, which gives you a really cool friend base because they're just everywhere. It also makes it very hard to see those friends sometimes. And so when we all get together at champs or at events, it's always a really great time of just catching up with people. And so I think that would kind of be my encouragement to alumni who are getting out of the program, is to like stay involved. You'll keep all those friendships. But I love running into firsters not during first season. So I ran into one of my good volunteer friends like randomly in an airport last fall. And we were like, I don't know if I recognize you without safety glasses on. But it was a really fun experience to be like, are you who I think you are? And, like, you're not wearing closed-toed shoes or long pants, but I think I recognize you from volunteering. And so that's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's neat, that kind of sense of community that builds, and I think a lot of people, a lot of the students in the program don't realize that the same sort of sense of community that the teams get, the volunteers form as well. And it's why part of the reason why so many of us come back to volunteer. April, can you walk us through? Like, I think a lot of people know what FTAs do, sort of. They see them in the vests. They know they're around, kind of keeping the field running and helping teams. But can you walk us through what a day in the life of an FTA is at an event? Because I think that'd be really cool for our potential future FTAs in the audience who might want to know.
Sure. So FTAs are, well, first, the acronym stands for First Technical Advisor, and we're really there at events to be a liaison from headquarters, and be kind of their eyes on the ground and make sure everything at events is happening the way headquarters wants it to happen. And really, we're there to be the on-site troubleshooting help for anything and everything with the event. FTAs are often the first ones at the venue and the last ones to leave. So when we're saying, please go home and leave the pits, it's because we want to go home too. But so like your typical competition day, we show up usually an hour before pits open. So that's 6:15 sometimes, 7:15 sometimes. And we do a morning meeting with all the key volunteers and kind of go through our show schedule for the day. Hey, this is when pits open. This is when matches start. This is when lunch is theoretically going to happen. This is when matches are going to theoretically end and all that. Of course, I'm sure all of you know that schedules can be very subject to change sometimes. But we have that morning meeting to kind of get everyone on the same page. And really, what I love to leave those meetings with is kind of a reminder that, hey, volunteers are here to make this a great experience for the teams. And that's what I try to do everything as a volunteer through that lens of, we're here to make this a great experience for the kids. So then we go do field test, make sure everything is still in compliance, sensors are working correctly, ball counters are counting correctly, check the color wheel and like the hope that it would get used. Go through like a total system check on the field and make sure everything is good out there. If it's the first day, we'll check in with inspection and say, hey, is everyone past inspection? Who isn't? How do we help get those teams through inspection and ready to play? And then once matches start, it's all about making sure robots can connect to the field, driver stations connect to the field, everything works. We spend a lot of time, like, you'll see our field monitor screen has all those lights and indicators on it, kind of giving us a live view of at least what feedback we're getting from the robots. It certainly doesn't tell us what's wrong, but it tells us what feedback we're getting or not getting, and using that information to tell teams, hey, we think your robot was browning out this match. We think your radio lost power. You'll often see us walk onto the fields with teams and look at a robot and be like, okay, this is like the most recent state of this robot and like as much preservation of the issue as we can have. What do we think happened? And that's where you can catch like the barrel connector of your radio fell out. Side note, please put your radio on power over Ethernet. Just do it now.
DOE all the way, all the time.
Exactly. Or your battery came unplugged, which happens. Or like, I don't know, your Robo Rio fell off, which has happened. and it helps us provide sort of that real-time feedback to teams so they can go back to the pits with a plan, say, hey, this is what we're going to do, execute on that plan, and then come back ready to play their next match. Ad infinitum through the rest of the day if everything goes well, and then we wrap up and go home. There's also this whole component to our job where it's dealing with all the things that come up over the course of an event. Hey, this is a week 1 event and we're running an hour and a half behind and we're supposed to break for lunch. What do we do? And that's a case where we'll work with the event manager and headquarters and the other people sort of responsible for the event to make sure that we make a decision that's best for everyone. So we want teams to have a chance for lunch break. We want teams to get out of there on time, but we've also got to play matches and we've got to get it done. And so really balancing all those different things over the course of a day.
I mean, there's a lot going on right there. I think a lot of people don't realize just how intense and how important that job is. And as the FTA, you're working with pretty much every team at the competition, troubleshooting whenever there's an issue. And I know you've seen a lot, but what's the craziest thing you've seen with a robot?
I mean, there's so much. There's usually one robot where like the battery just gets ejected from the robot and you have like a robot 12 feet away from the battery over here and you're just like, how did that happen?
Oh gosh.
I've seen Robo-Rios fall off of robots, which always surprises me. I think the most amusing ones are like when a robot just like loses a wheel out of their drivetrain, but like they just keep going like it doesn't matter. And it's like, isn't that important? That looks pretty important. And they're just like, no, it's fine. Or you like walk out onto the field after a match and you like pick up little bits of robot and you go back to the team with them and they're just like, oh no, my robot bits. Usually they're like, yeah, we expected that to happen. And then they like go on their merry way. But it's a time. So there's always those exciting moments. Like when robots are trying to hang or climb or what have you. I think the first time a robot yeeted it onto level 2 last year scared the heck out of me. But it just really caught me off guard. And then I was like, that's wild. And then it was like every match after that. But yeah, that was an experience.
It's really fun hearing all of this from a student's perspective because I don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. So I think there's this newfound appreciation from a lot of viewers like myself who are hearing what's really going on. April, I'd just like to backtrack a little bit because I'm hearing a lot about what you've been doing in first and what you've done after high school. But I know that in high school you mentioned that you were in VEX for a couple of years. But I'm wondering after that, where did you go to school and what did you study? And what exactly led you to, I guess, where you are today?
So I did BEST Robotics, not VEX, just
sorry.
to clarify. Which BEST is like, so it's a great little program, but it's a little program. And so after high school, I went to a university called Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. It's a little engineering college in West Indiana. It snows there a lot, and that's why I moved to Texas, where it does not snow. But I majored in electrical engineering with a minor in robotics, in the very mechanical sense of robotics, so like 4-bar linkages and things like that. Graduated in 2015 and started working at NI 3 months later and been at NI ever since. So I've had a few different roles over my 4.5 year career at NI. I started in what was called our engineering leadership program, and it was basically tech support for our industry customers. So if you think of like the CSA role at events, it was basically that, but for like people who buy NI products and use them in their day-to-day jobs. So it was a really interesting role. I moved from that to analog hardware or analog electronics engineering. I did power supplies for a while, and that was fun. And actually, over the course of my volunteering with FIRST, I learned that I really loved working with people to solve problems, not so much working with computers to solve problems. And so I pivoted my career a bit to my current role, which is in a division we call product planning. So I work with our customers and our R&D organization to make sure that our roadmaps are aligned and that we're building things that our customers need to continue advancing their scientific discoveries. And also we're building things that our R&D department wants to build and that are like cool and exciting and engaging. And so sort of making sure that's all matched up.
So that's a kind of, you've worked in so many different areas and you're still very early in your career. Now that you've been involved with FIRST, has that helped shape where you want your career to go?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So doing what I get to do as an FTA and getting that, like I said, that people problem solving experience is just so engaging for me and so fulfilling for me. And so I've definitely tried to bring as much of my FTA role into my actual career as I can. Obviously not with FIRST robots, but with our industry products. So I get to work, right now I'm focused on our avionics, which are communication buses for airplanes. So kind of like CAN, but on like this whole other level. And so that's been a lot of fun learning this whole new field that I'd never had an experience with before.
Working with CAN for airplanes sounds terrifying to me. It just like, because there's just so much responsibility and all that, but I think it's glad that we have like, you know, technologists and engineers like you who can do those sorts of cool things. We have a lot of questions in chat right now, so I want to start diving into those to make sure we get our proper attention. But first, we have a message in chat from John H. I think I know who that might be. It might be First Canada Regional Director for FRC, John Hobbins. Yes, who wants to thank April for all your enthusiasm and help here in Ontario. April helps bring her expertise and enthusiasm to our events. So
I'm flattered. I love getting to do provincials. It's super fun. The teams are awesome to work with. The volunteers are awesome. I mean, there's this one guy, Karthik, who's like a lot, but no.
You know, I hear he like starts kicking all your stuff and tries climbing
kicking
things.
my driver station.
I didn't kick anything last year other than
I know. I was very impressed. I try.
Really, I'm just a rule follower at heart. That's basically kind of who I am, right? You know, everyone believes that. Tying into provincials, we have a question from one of your co-FTAs, Jamie Sin, who would like to know, having FTA'd in Texas, Ontario, and the championship, which is your favorite event to FTA?
Champs, hands down. It's this whole, and like any team that goes or anyone who goes as a spectator, it's just this whole other level. You're on this wild ride of like emotions are high and the suspense is high and the energy in the room is just electric. It's super fun to see these teams really competing at their highest level while maintaining so many of the core principles of FIRST. Like I've had teams like at championships in like playoffs where one team blows a motor and someone from the other alliance who is competing with them to get to Einstein is like, here's a motor, go fix it. And like, that's the coolest thing to me.
That sounds really cool. I totally understand that. We have another question in the chat box here from B1 Hang Girl, who's asking, do you have an all-time favorite event that you have ever attended, whether it was volunteering there or mentoring there or being a student there?
That's so hard, an all-time favorite event.
We're asking a lot of challenging questions today.
Provincials last year was very cool. The production value of provincials is very high, and that's very fun. It's very cool. The marching band was just like, what is going on here? But it was really cool. Champs, I think Champs in Detroit, the first time I FTA'd, might be my all-time favorite. I got to work with a whole new crew of volunteers that I had never met before. It was just a really wild event. There's so many teams that I had like heard of and then got to meet, and that was awesome. Yeah, it's just an experience. And Champs, my first year, is really cool because it was my brother's last year as a student on a team. And so like my family was there, and that was very cool. It was possibly my favorite game. It was 2018, it was Power Up. And so that was a lot of fun. And it was just a really, really cool event.
So, you know, you've been an FTA and you've also been a CSA, but are there any other volunteer roles that you'd like to try out? That's a question from Sills in chat.
I've done a handful of others. I've lead queued for an event, and that's like this whole other world that queuing just exists in this bubble. I've inspected, and that's a lot of fun. You really get to talk to teams as an inspector, which is really cool. I think the next role I really want to do is judging. I would love to get to talk to teams off of the field when they're not like freaking out because their robot is broken. And really talk about what they're doing that is like the more than robots component of FRC. I think that would be really cool. I'm hoping to get to do that next season at some time if I ever take a break from FTAing, which is so hard to do because I love it.
It looks like we have another possible volunteer role for you. J. Paul K, otherwise known as Paul Keaton and otherwise known as Swaggy P, otherwise known as the Merch Master, would like to know if you would be interested in selling First Canada swag at an event.
I had about 6, so I have a First Canada crew neck from provincials last year that I love. And I had no less than 6 offers to buy it from me at CanPack. So Pete, you ought to head out to Canadian Pacific next year. There are some merch requests coming in from the West Coast.
Swaggy P going East Coast to West Coast. You know how he do. Thank you to all those great questions in chat. If you have any more, feel free to drop them in. We're having a lot of fun with this right now. April, as a volunteer and as a mentor, you're interacting with all these amazing students in our program. You've got a little bit of time right here. Is there one piece of advice you have for the students in our program that you'd like to share?
I guess I'll reiterate something that the 2 students from 1305 mentioned in the last segment is that really the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And I found that to be true on the volunteering side as well as the experiences that I've seen students have. First is really limitless in whatever you want to pour into it. And there's all these opportunities that you don't know exist until you get into it. Like I never knew I wanted to be an FTA until I CSA'd. And then I was like, actually, that's what I want to do. But I just started pestering all the FTAs in Texas, being like, can I be an FTAA for you? Can I show up at this event? Can I show up at that event? And then started pestering them to be like, can you ask HQ if I can be an FTA? Can we do that? And so it's very much you get out of it what you put into it. And so I think not being afraid to ask is something that has served me very well. You'll get told no, like no holds barred. I don't get everything I ask for in any way, shape, or form. But I've never like had a bad experience by asking.
The best piece of it, maybe not the best, was one of the best. There's been so many great pieces of advice I've gotten in this program over the years, but from my former mentor and former lead mentor on 1114, Steve Rourke, he always used to say, you can't get what you don't ask for. And
exactly.
It's just so true.
Those are really good pieces of advice. I mean, I know I'm appreciating this a lot as just a student in first, but I know that all viewers will really appreciate this whole interview. I have a question for you, April, that I've been wondering for a while. It seems like you've had a lot of really incredible experiences. You have all this great advice, but I want to know who has inspired you the most?
Who has inspired me the most? Something that really cool that had happened through first, which is wild because I'm not an alumni, but the robotics program that I helped start at my first high school, we started in Best, and my second year doing it, there was literally 3 of us on the team, and our coach, our science teacher, and when I left, I was like, hey, I felt so bad that I had to leave the school. My family moved, and I felt so bad I had to leave the school because I thought like that was going to be the end of the robotics program. And when I got into first, I posted about it on LinkedIn, and my science teacher from high school actually reached out to me a couple weeks before Houston last year. And that robotics program has grown into 3 FTC teams, and they're starting an FRC team next year. And he's like, we're actually going to be at Houston. We qualified. Are you going to be there? And so it was like this surreal moment to get to see him in this context that we had never imagined, a decade ago when I said goodbye. And so that was really cool. There were tears. It was awesome. So that was really inspiring for me. And then something else that just kind of inspires me across the board is when I see students step up and be leaders, whether it's on my team or teams that I see at competition over like the course of a weekend. Like, your FTAs get to know every team at the event. We get to know your drive teams. We know your struggles. We know what you're good at. We know what you're bad at. We know what you're hoping to pull off sometimes. We see all of this. Yeah, we see all of this from the side of the field. And when I see students really step up and be like, hey, we're going to try this. Don't know if it's going to work, but we're just like going to go all in. That's like just really exciting and engaging for me. And it's a great reminder of like why we get up and do what we do every day at events, and what we do as mentors and in the off seasons. And when things are like hard and difficult and like everyone on your team is fighting and you're like, this is terrible. I just like think of those moments and be like, we'll get through this. This is a great learning experience. And somehow we always come out stronger on the other side.
That's the kind of stuff that we like to hear on this show. This next question, it's from one of the guests from our future show, Karthik Patel. And April, you're going to have to help me because I don't understand the question at all. But it says, April, do you think 610 should upgrade their chair to a 6-seat chair from 4?
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
Can you give us?
That's just all I'm gonna answer with, but 100%.
Namira, do you understand what's going on?
I have no idea what's going on.
We're gonna leave this as this mystery, and then at maybe CNE, if I'm invited back for CNE, or at whatever events we have over the summer / fall / whatever time frame, maybe 610 will let us all in on this little secret.
I'm so confused, but that's okay. Another question from chat, well, a comment and a question. The enthusiasm you bring to your role is evident. Have you found it inspires others to react in a similar way?
I hope so. It's really something I try to do as an FTA, because I know y'all are stressed on the field. I know y'all are stressed in matches. I know y'all are stressed when your robot like explodes for no reason. And I think part of our role is to really kind of be that voice of reason and kind of that like calm personality. It's not always easy. I would like to refer to the lighting debacle on Curie this past year, that like I still have nightmares about. It's not easy to sometimes be like that cool, calm head when everything else is melting down. But I try to be that, and I try to always be this positive side of things. I'm naturally like a glass half full kind of person. And so I definitely try to bring that to events.
Well, April, we're coming down to the end of this segment here, so I just want to leave you with the final word here. Is there anything you'd like to say to the audience, to the students of this program, volunteers, anyone out there?
I think the one thing I will say is that like watching how the first community has responded to the whole COVID-19 shenanigans has been really inspiring. It was like equally devastating for the volunteers as it was for the teams to lose the season as it was supposed to exist, and just watching everyone else's response and being like, hey, this sucks, but we're going to get through it. And I think within like 12 hours of the news being announced that we were going to postpone the season, I had probably a dozen volunteers being like, so off seasons, when are those happening? How do we get this scheduled? How do we like start thinking about the next step? And so really that perseverance and that drive to continue to excel, regardless of the circumstances, I think really speaks to like the values of FIRST and the enthusiasm and the commitment that so many of our mentors and leaders in the programs have. And that really does trickle down to everyone.
Thank you, April. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being such an amazing volunteer, both here in Ontario, in Western Canada, and across the globe. Thank you for all that you've done. And that was a really cool segment. So let's talk robots anytime you want. And you can follow April on Twitter at April Talks Robots. So before we move on, we have another special message from one of our sponsors. All right, thank you, Rockwell, for all your support. Next up, it's our Youth Council segment. They're going to be talking about Project Green, and we have a great set of panelists right here, led by Annika Pinch from First Canada, along with Youth Council members Emiko from Team 7558, Emily F, who you saw yesterday as my co-host from Team 2056, Mahak from Team 4617, and Ishan from 2706. Say hello, folks.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Woo!
Thanks, Karthik. It's great to be back for another Youth Council Spotlight with another 4 awesome members of the Youth Council to talk about some of the ways in which robotics technology, like that which you've been discussing this morning, is being used to benefit society and the environment. Also to talk about some of the great initiatives that the Youth Council have, and also the entire FIRST robotics community have been doing so far, and to look forward to ways that we can continue to positively impact the environment, both during the season and throughout the year. So thanks again to the panelists for joining me today. Let's get started. All right, so here they are, and we'll look forward to hearing more from them in just a couple minutes. But before we do, let's take a look at, as I mentioned, some of the ways that robotics technology can really help benefit the environment, and maybe give some clues to our game designers on what a water game might look like.
FRED stands for Floating Robot to Eliminate Debris. It's a semi-autonomous robot that's solar powered and has a conveyor belt on it to go out and collect plastic trash in the ocean. Right now we have a small prototype that we've been building and enhancing, and eventually we want to scale it up to really large catamarans, like 100-foot, that go back to a mothership and dump the trash that they collect. And then that mothership is like a big cargo ship, will go and recycle, hopefully, most of the plastic that's collected. We have 4 prototypes right now. One is the USD Mini FRED, one was built by San Diego State, and then 2 more are currently in the works, and they're a little bit bigger, like 16-foot catamarans. And so hopefully we'll just keep scaling up and eventually get to that perfect FRED. I hope to do something with sustainability engineering in the future, so I think this really sparked a passion for it. And yeah, I think it'll be huge. There's a lot of trash out there, you know, you hear it's like the size of Texas, like numbers like that and figures like that are thrown around, just billions of pieces of plastic particles in the ocean, but I mean, nothing's going to change until you start making an effort to change it, so I think it's hopeful.
All right, so as he mentioned, nothing's going to change until we make an effort to change it, and I know that the viewers and everyone in the FIRST community have got what it takes to put in that effort and make those kind of changes, some of which we'll talk about in this next segment. So Project Green is sort of an all-encompassing idea with a whole bunch of different projects that have been going on. And I think I'd like to invite Emiko, if you don't mind telling us a little bit about this overarching project, and then we'll take a little bit of a closer look at some of those specific initiatives that have been going on.
Sure, thanks, Annika. So I know as the Youth Council, we've been looking at things that are really important to us. And in the last episode, or yesterday, we talked a bit about gracious professionalism. And we're going to talk about a few different initiatives later on. But sustainability and sort of Project Green are really important to us, and also really important to the world as a whole at this time. And FIRST prepares us in a lot of ways for kind of every aspect of life in terms of the habits we develop through the program. And what we really wanted to encourage through Project Green was ultimately creating sustainable habits that will sort of set us up in the future and encourage those conversations about our impact on the environment and our footprints. So with hashtag First Project Green, that sort of like Annika says, encompasses the sustainable habits we're trying to introduce, and then those conversations that we're encouraging, and some of the initiatives that we've created, which we'll talk about a bit more during this presentation.
Well said. Thanks so much, Emiko, for describing Project Green. One of the ways that we launched this initiative way back in October was with the Community Cleanup Challenge. And thanks to everyone who participated. You may have been one of the 100 students and mentors from the over 40 first teams that participated. And throughout the event, we know that team members wore their first or team gear and shared pictures of their cleanup efforts. We even had teams from as far away as Wikwemikong unceded territory on Manitoulin Island, BC, Quebec, and even Texas. So thanks to everyone for participating. I wondered if maybe Ishan, I see a post here actually from your team, and wondered if you might be able to tell us a bit more about what that experience was like.
For sure. So for us, we had like almost 20 people come from our team to actually clean up around the library in Ottawa. And this was also nearby a school, so we cleaned up the whole area together, and it was really fun. And furthermore, we got into the local community voice newspaper, which was pretty nice. And the library thanked us for cleaning up around since we partnered with them. And we were also thanked by our MP.
Well done. So really, it sounds like the message really spread quite widely thanks to your efforts. That's great. And I know a couple of the other youth council members on the panel today participated. Emiko, how about your team?
Yeah, my team also did the cleanup. And like Ishan mentioned, it was a really great experience. It was actually one of the first times our entire team was together, because this was back in October. And so it was a really great way to practice team bonding, and getting the newer members of the team to meet some of the more senior members. And also, I think it's important to remember that as a FRC team, we have a bit of a platform in terms of sharing things with our community. And that, like Ishan mentioned, how his team was featured in their newspaper, my team also wrote wrote an article for our school's newsletter, and it was a really great opportunity to share sort of the benefits of community cleanup with our actual community. And I'd also like to stress that while it was really nice to have a dedicated day to do this, you can get out, I mean, maybe not at this exact moment at a time of social distancing, but you can get out and clean up around your community as a team at any time during the year. That's not this time. So you don't have to wait for like an actual community cleanup day. This is a really great team bonding exercise to do at any time.
That's great. Thanks, Emiko. Yeah, as you said, you don't need to just do this on a specific day. It can be at any time of the year. And also like what you said about your teams kind of having a platform and a voice within the community. It's almost like FRC teams are celebrities that choose a cause and they fundraise for it and raise awareness about it in a way that cause might not otherwise be able to reach a wide audience like that. So thanks for doing that. One of the other really cool initiatives that took place in February was an Instagram campaign in which some of the youth council members compiled and shared tips that the teams could use to, again, continue reducing their environmental impact during the season and at competitions. And here are just a few of the many really good tips that were posted on Instagram. And Mahak, I wondered if you had tried any of these with your team, or if there were any others that weren't mentioned in the Instagram campaign, but that you thought teams might benefit from.
Yeah, definitely. I thought the tips were extremely helpful. I know that we used green tip number 1 a lot. 3M actually sponsored us for the past 2 years, and every time they give us more sponsorship, we always make sure we ask for reusable water bottles. First of all, 3M has really pretty reusable water bottles, so we love having them. And they're super great to make sure everyone has them when coming to competition, so that we're not like constantly using plastic water bottles and creating more waste. So I encourage you guys, maybe ask your sponsors for reusable water bottles or materials, so that way you're not creating too much waste. something else my team has recently started doing is instead of using polycarb or Lexan, we've started using PETG. I actually have a little bit here. You can see it, you can get it like pretty thick. It's nice and clear, just like polycarb, but it's a lot more environmentally friendly. It's one of the easiest plastics to recycle and reuse. So we've started using that a lot more on our robot. And it's a lot stronger than acrylic and glass, and it's a lot cheaper than polycarb. So if you know that you want to use Lexan because it looks really nice, try using PETG as a substitute, which is something we've done a lot this year. And it doesn't break very easily, even though its impact strength is not as great as polycarb. It's still perfectly good for robots because we don't take too much impact. And if we do, it's usually around the sides, which we have metal anyways. But yeah, it's something we've been trying to do a lot is use materials that are better for the environment, just because we go through a lot of materials as robotics teams.
Maha, can I just interrupt you for a second there? Because the PETG suggestion really caught my ears, caught my eyes. Do you know where teams can get PETG if they're looking for an alternative that's a little bit more green than polycarb?
I'm not exactly sure where our team gets it from, because we work out of Western University. So our mentor, he's an IT member there. So he has a lot that we use for laser cutting, but I'm sure like most companies that like sell plastics, I'm sure you can find it there. It's a really sustainable product, and a lot of companies do sell it. I'm not exactly sure about specifics though.
That's totally fine. Maybe, you know, for our viewers in chat, if you have a source for that, just drop the link in there, and hopefully we can share that with the community.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. That's a great tip and an awesome addition to the ones that are already posted. So if you miss any of those tips, you're welcome to check out the hashtag First Project Green on Instagram, and you can see these and many others on there. And speaking of water bottles, Mahak, as you mentioned, one of your sponsors provides you with those. There was another initiative that some of you may have noticed at some of the earlier events this season, in which teams were invited to present their reusable water bottle at the swag booth for First Project Green sticker designed by one of our panelists, Emily. That looks great. And it showed their commitment to protecting the environment if they stuck this to their water bottle or their robot. And so, Emily, I wondered if you could share with us a little bit more about the inspiration for this idea, and what are some of the changes or in habits that you've seen as a result of this initiative?
Well, the reason I came up with this idea was it was right after our community cleanup, and I wanted something that we could continue to be going green in our community. Maybe not exactly as another community cleanup, but something like that. So I came up with the idea like, let's make a sticker. So I started designing a sticker, and it turned out like this. I started designing the sticker to the point where now at the events in Canada where they were handed out this year, the 3 events that happened, you went up to the merch table and you sort of showed them your water bottle, and they'd give you a sticker just to show that you are actually going green. And the funny part about these stickers is the sticker material is actually reused or disposed paper, and it actually is considered a no waste sticker. So the backing has no waste. It's actually like reused from other things, which is really cool. Yeah. So.
Absolutely, and that was really important, because when we were talking about on what kind of material do we want to display these stickers, do we want it to be buttons, we were thinking about a sustainable material like Mahak's teams is doing with the use of PETG. So really aligned with the philosophy of this whole Project Green initiative in the first place. It looks great, and we're looking forward to many more opportunities to give those out. At this time, you may have heard a lot in the media about some of the positive impacts that the coronavirus has been having on air pollution and on the environment. And this is not to say that pandemics are good for humanity or good for health, but some of the habit changes that are resulting from from this situation could continue to benefit the environment and air quality, which could lead to improved human health in the future. And so we'd love to find out, as we did in yesterday's segment, if you tuned in, what are some of the ways that we can continue to have a positive impact on the environment. We've done a couple of great initiatives so far. What else can the first community continue to do in the future to help continue to see these positive impacts? We've got Earth Day coming up on April 22nd, but Emiko, as you said, it doesn't just need to be one day of the year. We can do things all year. And Mahak, I think you might have had an example of this going on in your community.
Yeah, something my community group recently put out was a COVID cleanup. So even though you are socially distancing yourselves, you can still go outside and clean up your neighborhood just to, I don't know, get rid of some extra time that you have staying at home. So it's a great way for you to positively impact your community and the environment while still taking care of your own personal health.
Great, thank you so much. And so at this time, we'd like to again invite viewers and anybody that's tuning in to visit this website, again, www.menti.com. And if you input the code 257830, you have an opportunity to enter some of the different ideas that you have for ways that either now during this time of social distancing or afterwards, how we can continue to positively impact the environment. And some of the things you might like to see the Youth Council doing on your behalves within FIRST programs to help positively impact the environment. So if you've got your devices ready, please go to www.menti.com. And this one's a little bit different. It asks you to input a word, but you actually have 25 characters. I know it's not much, so let's see how many ideas we can generate in this word cloud here. And for our panelists, let us know if there's any that really resonate with you or on which you'd like to elaborate a little bit. Oh, wow.
Oh, wow, look at that.
While that's going on, I just want to bring up one comment from the chat from our FTA, Karen. I'm so happy we get to meet the Youth Council members. Everyone is so eloquent and well-spoken.
Agreed. Yeah, keep them coming. This looks great.
Yeah, the things like grabbing your neighbor's groceries or combining errands is really great. Like if you're going out for groceries, you might as well call up a few of your neighbors, ask if they want anything so you're not risking too many people going out at once, which is a really great idea, I feel.
With the double bonus of reducing your carbon footprint with that single trip versus many going out.
A question we have in the chat, has anyone in the Youth Council thought of sustainable alternatives to make team buttons?
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
When we went over thinking about the sticker, we were debating throwing it back and forth whether we do button, sticker. It came to the sticker because it made more sense, and we found an easier way to do that as an eco-friendly way. Buttons are hard though because you have like the metal backing and then the plastic and then the paper inside. So yeah, I'm not sure.
The nice thing about buttons though is that you don't throw them out after you
That's
grab them, or I would hope you don't throw them out.
Buttons are more reusable.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a good thing to think about.
Going.
Yeah.
That can be our next challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I have a huge container of just buttons in my basement, and it's really good.
These are some great suggestions. We'll leave this word cloud open in the background and take a look later. And thank you so much for the suggestions, both here and in the chat, about some of the things that folks can continue to do at events and beyond. Love it. Yeah, keep them coming. Since we do have a couple minutes left, we also thought it would be fun to play a little game. And in the way today's game is going to work is I'm going to be sending one of our panelists a secret clue that they are going to have to draw, like in Pictionary. And we invite the other panelists and anyone in the Twitch chat to try and guess what green tip they are trying to represent with their drawing. And so I'm going to quickly send Emiko her first clue, and we'll have Ishan and Mahak. You'll try and guess the clue, and maybe Emily, if you could watch the chat for some of the guesses from the viewing audience. Let's see how this goes.
This is very exciting.
Namirah, you can guess too. Karthik,
Great.
you can be a contestant too. So I'm gonna invite again, Emiko, if you could briefly share your screen. And I know you have your clue. No one else knows
All
what
right.
no one else knows what it is. So
I'll get started then.
Emiko's artistic abilities are put to the test.
yes.
It's a bunny. It's a bunny. No, not a bunny.
It's a fork. It's a fork.
It is a fork, but that is not the.
So what
Cutlery.
green tip?
Plastic cutlery. Reuse your cutlery.
Reusable cutlery.
Reuse is a close word.
Reusable cutlery.
Recycle?
Recycled cutlery. Yes.
We'll give it to them. That sounds
Right,
good.
all
Well
right.
done. So yes, carry your own cutlery or use reusable cutlery. Well done. Okay.
I was really hoping it was a bunny.
It
Poor
could have been
Karthik.
both. So I think we'll have time for one more. So maybe Mahak, let me send you a quick clue.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yes.
Great. And if you would be so kind as to share your screen.
All right.
Oh, looks like you got a head start there.
It's a whale.
Clean slate. Okay. Any guesses, Emily, coming in from the chat?
A duck.
Car.
Car.
Igloo.
Carpooling.
Ding, 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 ding.
Oh,
Ishan,
ah.
you win.
Where's my card?
You win a first pen so that you can draw actual pictures on paper. Congratulations. Okay, we're just about out of time. Thank you so much for participating. Let's see if there are any last ideas to share with the viewing audience.
Well, we do have one from the chat from
Okay.
April, our previous guest, who wanted to know what if teams had a swap for a recyclable item for a button? I think the idea is that instead of you bring some of your old buttons to an event, you trade to get a new button to kind of reduce the supply of buttons and so teams aren't making as many each year.
Like this
That is
idea.
a great idea.
Thanks, April. And
Yeah.
before I didn't hear the original part. So when I heard swap, I was even thinking about other parts. So not necessarily just buttons, but maybe some parts to actually build your robot that you had lots of or didn't need anymore.
Mhm.
Awesome. Yeah. And so let's check back in on our Mentimeter. Looks like there have been tons more suggestions coming in. I like the button swap, so you can throw that one in using the code if it's not there already.
Connect virtually. That's what we're doing right now.
I've noticed there's a lot of things around food, like eating locally, buying at bulk stores, going plant-based. And I know that like meat is a huge resource suck. And that's definitely a good thing to maybe think about, especially tying some of those. I like that a lot of the suggestions that are coming up are linked, so you can kind of tie them all together.
Absolutely. Thanks, Emiko. And speaking of food, we know that healthy eating options have been a focus for you as a member of the Youth Council, among many other things. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit more next week. So hoping people will tune in to hear more about that and other health and wellness initiatives as well. For anyone that's interested in finding out even more ways than the ones that were suggested today for helping the environment, both improving the environment and your own lifestyle, and any other things that you can do to keep this positive impact going, you're welcome to check out these links after today's broadcast, and we'll share these in some way with the viewing audience after today's show. So again, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you so much to Mahak, Ishan, Emiko, and Emily for being here today, and to all of the Youth Council members and the entire First community for all that you've done and will continue to do to help with these initiatives. And I think I'll pass it over to Karthik to lead us into our final segment for the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Annika. Thank you to the Youth Council. Each one of these segments just kind of reminds us of, what great leaders you are and how much cool stuff's coming out there. And thanks for the chat, for really interacting, diving in on these topics. I mean, with a project like Project Green, it can't just be a small group of people involved. To really make the types of changes that we want, we need to get our whole community behind these sorts of projects. And it's been really cool to see these initiatives take off and where they've gone from here. And so, Annika, can you want to tell us a little bit about the next Youth Council segment we're going to be having in the upcoming episodes?
Absolutely, yeah. We've got a segment coming up on Tuesday, as I mentioned. It's about health and wellness. So in addition to some healthy eating options, there's also been a campaign going on every Monday. There's been a post about some of the ways that you can incorporate self-care into your lives. And then on Wednesday, there'll be another segment about allyship and looking at some of the ways that some of the things that have been done already and how we can all continue to be good allies for one another, both on and off the teams.
All right, thank you. I'm definitely looking forward to those segments. I know our audience is too. But now, before we get to our next segment, let's take a look back at the 2019 Detroit Championship. All right, that video was a little bit quieter than what we're normally used to at the championship, but it really let us soak in some of the details here. So Namirah, you ready for our next segment?
I'm so excited.
All right, well, for our next segment, we have Team 771 SWAT from Oakville, Ontario. They've been involved with FRC since 2002. They've won 11 blue banners, including 4 regionals, districts / provincials, most recently winning the 2019 Ontario Provincial Championship. So let's welcome in Amy, Adalia, and Emily from SWAT. Say hello, folks.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
So how about each of you tells us a little bit about yourselves to get us started?
All right, who wants to go first?
Let's start with Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm in grade 11. I'm one of the co-captains of SWAT this year, and I also work a lot with mechanical and design sub-team.
Cool. Adalia, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm Adalia. I'm in grade 12. I'm the other co-captain on SWAT, and I was the drive coach last year and this year, I guess. And then I'm Emily. I am the chief of technical, and I was the driver last year and the driver this year.
Fabulous. We're super excited to see, Team 771 SWAT did not have a chance to compete this year, so we're all excited to see what your robot's all about. So please take it away.
Sure. Okay, so we are SWAT 771. SWAT stands for St. Mildred's Women Advancing Technology. We were the first all-girls team in Canada. We're a student-run team. We have about 50 girls, and we start in grade 8. Right. So, kind of going into our team resources and kind of about our team, we have limited build meetings. This is on the next slide. We have limited build meetings, so we have 3 a week with shortened hours after our personal stop build day. We have limited access to machinery, so in-house we only have a bandsaw, a drill press that is now broken, the table snapped off, and numerous power tools, hand power tools, such as like a pneumatic riveter, drills, etc. And because of these limitations, we rely on the support of our CNC sponsor, Shaw Almex, as well as the support from the OT teams 1334 and 1374, who've given us like endless support throughout build season, allowing us to come in and mill our own stuff. So that's really appreciated. And then also on our team, we have a lot of young team members. So 80% of our members are in grade 10 and below. And all of our sub-team leads are also grade 10 with the exception of one grade 11. So kind of understanding these limitations and like the circumstances of our team, we created a general strategy for building our robot before even knowing what the game was and before kickoff. And that general strategy is a 2-mechanism limit with a priority on the tele-up scoring mechanism, overall to be a prime second pick and defense capable.
Yeah, so just jumping right in and keeping in mind those resources, we developed our 2020 strategy. So this year we always, like always, we design our robot with defense in mind. That means we do not build to play defense, but we build so that we can play defense if need. So this includes we built a solid rigid drivetrain and weak gear for that. As well, we build our mechanisms with the possibility of taking a hit and just keeping that in mind.
All right.
Adalia, I believe you're muted.
There we go. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. If we go back to the slide before, sorry. So our next thing was the control panel that we focused on. So we wanted to be able to reliably achieve both position and rotation control. We saw it as a valuable asset to alliances because, like Emily said, we want to be a good second pick, and we assumed that the captain in the first pick would be wanting to continue cycling and scoring, and we assumed that they also wouldn't want to miss out on those extra points. And our goal was to be able to be in and out of the control panel in under 5 seconds for both rotation control and position control.
Yeah. So sorry, we're still on that previous slide. So we also prioritize being able to score in the low port. This was just because we wanted to be able to hold our own weight and contribute to the scoring the 29 power cells in order to perform rotation control. So we prioritize being able to hold and score up to 5 power cells, as well as the ability to herd balls in mind. We decided on the low port just because it was the most feasible within our team's resources and required the least testing.
I think we're ready to go to the next slide now. Yeah, so this is a render of our CAD of our full robot. A photo of our actual robot is on the Blue Alliance, but it's very similar, pretty much exactly this. And still on this slide, you can see kind of the pathway that power cells will go through within our robot. So from the ground through the intake, up the mini conveyor, into the bucket, and then out of the bucket. So then on the next slide.
Emily, I'm just looking at this render right here, and I'm really impressed by the construction techniques that you're using, because it just seems like, it looks like everything on this robot could be cut and done with hand tools because of the simple use of gussets. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So we really like to, a huge part of it is really simplifying the assembly process, because we're working in like a middle school classroom on tables, on floors. And then a lot of, we use a lot of VersaFrame and the use of gussets, custom gussets. And some of those pieces are also milled by our sponsor. So we kind of basically get everything in after we CAD it, we get it sent out to be machined, then we get everything in, and it's pretty much like putting together from a guide, which is our CAD. So it's really simple, and it, like, because the whole design of the robot is very simplified, it only takes us a couple of days to actually assemble the robot. And then we have a huge period of time to test it and then improve it. Yeah. So in more detail about the low port mechanism, we intake solely from the floor, and then those cells are transferred to our container, where we're able to store the maximum of 5 power cells. And also, as they enter the container, the cells passively organize into 2 rows, and that's due to having a divider in our bucket. So you can kind of see that in the GIF. And having that too also allows the balls to have a little bit of space between each other. We found that without the divider, the balls would sometimes get caught on each other and just stay locked in the bucket. So that having the divider there ensures that they're always free to roll out. Since the later half of build season, or in the later half of build season, we changed up our robot a bit too, so that the balls are more securely in the robot once they enter the bucket, so that we can move from the loading station side of the field to the scoring station side of the field with the balls like securely in our robot. And then when we're ready to score and we choose to score at the low port, it just requires the driver to line up flat against the wall and then open the bucket door for the balls to roll out at low port height.
And they're fed into the low port by gravity?
Yes, yeah. So that bucket's on an angle, so it just rolls straight out.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So the control panel mechanism was one built by 2 of our grade 10 leads. They did a great job. Good job, Eric and Phyllis. So the control panel mechanism is essentially, it's a compliant wheel, and it just gets extended upwards from underneath the trench to spin the control panel. There's a color sensor attached, which ensures swift cycles in and out, so that we can be in and out in 5 seconds, which was our goal. Yeah, and it just requires the driver to come in and line up and pull out.
What type of gearing do you have through that gearbox there?
It's a versaplanetary gearbox. I think it's at a, Emily, is it at a 1 to 25, I think now?
I think it's definitely at 2 stages. I think it used to be 100 to 1, and then they brought it down to maybe 70 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of motor is there on there? I can't tell from the render if that's a 550 or a 775 Pro.
It's a bag, I think.
Oh, okay.
No, I think it's 775.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I guess it's on to the next slide, which is a little bit about the code. So our programming subteam is about 6 students. We've got 4 grade 9s, 1 grade 10 lead, and then myself. I tried to get as many people as possible in the one photo over there, but it seems to be only 4 people in a 4 programmers in a room at a time. So this year, to help out with sustainability, our lead programmer, Lucy, with the help of our grade 9s, helped to code the functionality of the robot. So that's the driving, the mechanisms, anything that the robot kind of basically does with the joystick is what Lucy and them coded. While I tried to focus on sensors. So I wanted to learn as many sensors as possible and put them on the robot so that it would kind of be able to, the younger students would be able to learn it after I taught them. So for autonomous, we code based on the fact that we don't have the ability to make a field at our school. So we code based on constants around the field and we code to allow ourselves easy tuning once we get to a field. So we use a limelight, encoders, and gyro for autonomous. And then for the control panel mechanism, like we said, we want it to be in and out in 5 seconds, and the color sensor allowed for that to be completely automated when the operator pressed the button. So that removes any stress for the operator and allows for accuracy.
So Adalia, if I have one question for your auto here, it looks like you have a lot going on with the encoders and the gyro and the limelight together. What really brought all of those together? I mean, where did those ideas come from?
So each year it was kind of, let's learn, or since I've been on the programming sub team, so for 4 years, it's been let's learn one sensor a year. So the first one was gyro, and then encoders, and now a limelight is new this year. And using all those together has kind of made it easy for us to make an autonomous that we're kind of confident with, even without kind of testing it on a field, so we can go to a competition and easily make that work. I mean, that's the goal. We never got to test that out, but that was the plan.
Right.
And
off season.
yes, and for your auto this year, what did you have, like a path drawn out that you were going to follow?
Yeah, so we wanted to be able to start from any side or anywhere on the field as long as it's on the baseline, and then be able to dump into the low port. That was so that we could kind of work with our alliance, be as helpful as possible, and if someone had to have like a specific starting spot, we didn't need to get in their way. We could try to be able to still be able to score with a different path. Yeah, so I guess moving on to the next slide. We had 2 goals for our 2020 season. One of them, of course, was more of like a, where do we want to get to with our robot? And that was, we wanted to qualify for provincial championships. And then our second goal, which was our very big focus this year, was focusing on sustainability above all else. So we wanted to encourage members into critical roles. We wanted to get them involved in leadership. We wanted them to kind of advance their knowledge, make sure that they knew what they were doing, they knew how to teach others, they knew how to learn, so that when the grade 11s and 12s leave, they can still continue to run the team at the same level.
We have a question from chat, which really ties into exactly what you're talking about right now, but from Akira Tanabe. Could you please elaborate the point on how you transfer knowledge and experience to 80% of the younger generation under grade 10?
Yeah, we kind of get into that on the next slide in terms of mechanical.
Perfect. Woo!
Adalia, if you have anything to comment on programming.
I mean, you can go into mechanical first, and then I'll give my 2 cents because you have that prepared.
Sure. So yeah, with the focus on succession, for mechanical on our team, we kind of go from the role of being involved in the assembly of the robot and then to suddenly designing your own mechanism. So we have like a very detailed CAD training process, which we've referred to as Academy in the past, to help younger members reach that stage where they're ready to design their own mechanism. So it starts off with learning and really understanding the mechanical concept. So why use chain over belts or belts over chain, for example. Really understanding the reasons for each step in an assembly or design process. So our team members mostly use materials made by our team, listed under like our FRC tutorials website, which is linked on our team's website. But that kind of goes through the explanation of each kind of area of mechanical and the mechanical concepts.
Yeah, so after they get the basic mechanical concepts down, we encourage the kids to gain basic CADing skills. So we just send them an email with a bunch of resources and links that they can use to better their knowledge. These include tutorial engineers videos as well as 1114's videos, and some just notes that Emily and I have taken along the way while learning. And we really encourage them to do some at-home studying just to kind of figure out what CADing is and the basics down. And sometimes on slow meetings, slow mechanical meetings, we'll have an in-person CAD session where we make a piece of box tube and we then download a gusset and just put that together and just get them involved and slowly ease them in.
Yeah. And then in the third step, they kind of combine their mechanical knowledge and their CADing knowledge to really master a West Coast style drivetrain, because that's probably going to be the first thing that they design on our team. So with that, they use, they mostly follow my West Coast Drive CADing series on SWAT's YouTube, which explains the CADing process as well as further explanation on mechanical concepts used in the drivetrain.
After they kind of get through that drivetrain, we kind of try to advance their skills, and we encourage them to go out and study other mechanisms found online through Vex's Build Blitz, as well as just RabCAD models found online. And we encourage them to go study and maybe make their own and then go off and practice.
This is a really cool plan. It looks like it's very detailed and very developed. When did you start with, I guess, the academy? I like the name too. It's cool. It kind of started after 2017, like in the off season of 2017, kind of when a similar thing happened. It was a very young team, and then we had some grade 12s who were graduating, and that was like when we really needed to transfer the CAD knowledge for the next coming season. Like it was critical. So that's when it kind of, the plan started forming. And then just as like, I've grown as a CADer, and then eventually as Amy's grown, we've had to continuously teach more kids. And then just together, we've come up with like this really thorough plan.
Yeah. It's just kind of developed as the need has come through, and it was just kind of the process that Emily and I went through, and we just kind of formalized it.
Yeah. So getting into our troubleshooting lessons too. So these are kind of the major problems in general that we've had with our robot over the season that we've come to fix by the end of it. So our biggest challenge was the power cells jamming and ripping within our intake. So because these balls can compress so much and they're made of like really soft material, they often got stuck inside the belts in our intake. So in between the belt and the pulley, and just get caught there and then further jam into our robot. So our solution to that was reducing the amount of interaction the balls had with those areas. So we went from having like 4 belts and pulleys, bringing the ball in to 2, and then putting compliant wheels next to those sets of pulleys so that the ball is interacting with the wheel and not the pulley itself.
Another big challenge we had this year was just we learned the true meaning of accessibility and how we should really be designing with thinking about repairs and what can fail. We had an issue this season where we had to, because once we figured out that we needed encoders, we realized we didn't have enough space, and so we had to load those into our gearboxes, and we found that we didn't have enough room to actually disassemble the gearbox because we couldn't take it out of the robot. So we had to end up doing everything while it was still like inside the robot. And what made it particularly hard was that we had a mounting bar above the gearbox. And so we really learned that we should be designing for accessibility as well as addressing issues early, because we found that because they were so inaccessible, it was really hard to address things early, because we always just kind of learn, because we always kind of assumed it's a grease it and forget it problem, but we learned that sitting down and just backing through kind of the process and just really trying to find the source of the issue.
Yeah, and that being said, it's still very doable for us to disassemble our gearboxes, and we've gotten pretty good at it the number of times we've had to do it on this robot. But it was just a little bit of a pain not being able to fully take it out, but we're still able to do it really fast if we have to disassemble it completely. Okay, so into team lessons. So these are kind of like the general things that we've learned, the three of us specifically have learned from this season and then what we've taken away. And one of those major things is that there isn't one right way to do things. We quickly learned of each of our differing work styles and different approaches to things within our leadership team. And we had to learn how to really appreciate each one of those to maintain like healthy collaboration. Also, with all this talk about succession and our succession plans, what we learned that is totally okay is that those plans won't be followed to a T. We all have our different definitions of what being ready is, and there isn't one set definition either. And it's totally okay too to adapt your plans for build season roles to ensure that you aren't punishing someone for, in air quotes, not being prepared enough for build season, especially like if you set that definition for a designer or a lead. You really want to adapt the roles to ensure that everyone's set up for success and for growth.
And finally, kids are not robots. People need to take breaks. They need to have their space. They need to talk. They can't just be working 24/7. And that's something that we need to learn, is that different people need different time. They can work for different amount of times and have different work styles and everything. So overall, you can build a family environment by just understanding that people are people, not robots. And then moving on to the next slide, I guess what we did without Bag Day. So for our timeline, we set ourselves a firm timeline at the beginning of the year, of the season. This was back in December. We met with all of our leads. We asked them, how long do you think it will take to CAD the robot, to design the electrical board, to code a mechanism? And then we pieced that together into a timeline. And then we set ourselves a mock Bag Day, which was on February 19th, which was the Wednesday after what would normally be the Bag Day. And this was due to the fact that burnout is a problem, it's prevalent, and continuing to keep a build season moving would train team leaders, team members, mentors. So we just decided to make ourselves a stop Bag Day. We had our robot done for the scheduled day, and then afterwards we continued to work. However, we didn't go as late. So we would go, instead of going Tuesday and Thursday until 9, we would go maybe Tuesday until 7, Thursday until 6. And we continued to troubleshoot, code autonomous, make changes to better our robot. We continued driver practice. And we found that having that robot done for that specific date was really helpful to be able to make these changes with a pretty complete robot. Our robot was also taken home over our March break, which starts, I believe, a week earlier than public school March break start. And it was taken home by Emily in her garage, and we did driver practice in there 3 or 4 days out of that week, which was a nice way to spend the March break without the Bag Day.
All right,
Amy,
well, this is a
you're
question I need answered.
Yes, me too. I was wondering the same thing. Who is Heffalump?
Who is
All right.
Heffalump? Well,
So I guess the story about this is that it was the first time we were revealing our full CAD to the entire team. This is the first time they're seeing what we are going to be working with, what they'd be building, what they'd be coding with. And after explaining this all, walking them through the intake process, our first comment was from one of our electrical leads, whose name is Lydia. And she kind of stopped everyone. She was like, wait a minute, are you guys seeing what I'm seeing? And she proceeds to go up to the whiteboard with a whiteboard marker and outlines the shape around our CAD to be an elephant. And we were kind of all like, oh yeah, I see it, I see it. And then we embraced it and then named our elephant robot after the very famous elephant Heffalump from Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, from Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah.
Got it.
I'm sorry, Karthik, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. You can brush up on that during this time of social distancing.
Yeah, that pretty much concludes what we were planning on going through. As a team, we're pretty proud of what we've accomplished this season, and we're hopeful for the future. And if we could play, whether that's within the season or an off season, but we're looking forward to the future.
So thank you so much for that presentation. That was great. Love to hear about the robot. Love seeing Heffel up there. A lot of the questions that we have in chat, you talked about in general. There's been a lot of talk about sustainability and how are you going to pass lessons down. One question came from the chat, and I think this really applies, especially considering the success that you had last season. But when building a robot with a priority of defense, what type of training do you give to your drive team?
Well, in terms of mechanically, building for defense is just building a really robust robot and making sure that everything's really tight mechanically, and then keeping our 6-sim drivetrain of single speed. In terms of driving, we did a lot of just practice in building my kind of instincts, like reflexes, and then also we did a little bit of practice of kind of chasing around, not chasing, but there'd be Lydia, again, our one electrical lead, kind of walking around on a path trying to escape our robot blocking her. So practice against that. Yeah.
All right. Well, I just want to thank Team 771, Amy, Adalia, and Emily for your time and everything you're doing, and also those great tutorials you have on your website. I know you kind of designed them in mind with your own team sustainability, but I know they've been helping a lot of other teams out there too. They're a great resource, and I'm glad you were able to share the links to that today. Any final thoughts from the three of you?
I guess just even though me and Adalia are in grade 12, we've had a pretty awesome first experience. Yeah, despite not making it to competition season this year, I totally don't regret a thing. It was still an amazing time.
For sure. Well, second that.
Absolutely. There's so much more than just our competitions. There's so much learning that goes on and the strength of this community. So thank you for being on the show today. As we're getting to time here to wrap things up, I just want to kind of finish things off. Thank you, Namirah, for being an amazing co-host. Did you have fun today?
I had so much fun today, Karthik. Thank you.
No problem. You want to do this again sometime?
I would love to do this again.
Well, let's make that happen. I also want to give a shout out to another one of our youth council members. You haven't met him on the show yet, but you will be meeting him soon. Aiden M from Team 610, who designed the awesome and gorgeous First Canada Live logo. So shout out to Aiden and all the graphics works he's done, especially for some of the posts on Instagram that the youth council has been generating. Aiden's been great with that. Just to wrap things up today, we're here today for First Canada Live because of what's been happening with social distancing and all. But remember, social distancing doesn't necessarily mean, it means physical isolation, but it doesn't mean total, complete isolation. So our first community, one of the strengths is it's a community. And make sure you're checking in on your friends. Just fire a text message, send them a short thing, even pick up the phone and give someone a call that you haven't talked to that you would normally be seeing at school or seeing elsewhere at Robots or anything like that. Just pop in, say hi, do a Google Hangout, do a chat. Just make sure we're all connecting with each other and we're keeping our mental facilities going so we can kind of stick through this tough time and get through it and make everything come together for the best. It's there's a lot going on right now and the world's a crazy place, but we've got each other, and that's what we're here for, and that's what this show is for. So tomorrow is Saturday, so we will not be having a show, but we're going to be back on Monday. Check out our website, First Robotics Canada /First Live, where you can see an updated schedule of all the panelists and whoever's going to be on the show. Monday, I believe we have Parth Patel from Team 610 for story time. So I know he's going to have some really cool stuff. We'll have some new teams, some new action, some new excitement. So thank you to everyone for being on the show. Thanks to all the panelists and especially our producers behind the scenes who've been making this show happen. So have a great weekend, everyone, and we will see you on Monday. Stay safe.